Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Going live. We are going live with Parini Shroff, the author of The Bandit Queens. I see Parini has just joined. I hope everyone brought their questions and their books. I am so excited. I have loved this read. I'm really, really stoked to get to sit down with Parini. This is so fun. Okay, I always have issues. Let's see if we can do this seamlessly. And thank you so much for joining. I'm just so excited about this story, and very excited to talk to Parini. And I have lots of questions. I hope y'all loved this book. Curious if everyone else thought it was as fun and satisfying. And what were your favorite parts?
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
I'm great.
So
Thank you so
good.
much
How
for
are
having me.
you? Oh my God. Are you kidding? Thank you for taking time. I know how busy you are. I am so excited to delve into your newest book. I know that you've had many stories that you've written before, but this is like your first debut novel.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
I love that cover.
I love it. I love the colors, and I feel like, I don't know, it's so beautiful, and it just brings up like the flair of the saris and the colors of the village. And
I totally, I think the team
perfect.
did a great job.
Personally.
And I love that it's like set against the blackness, because there are, there's dark, but there's light, and the cover, I think, encapsulates that.
Yes, absolutely. A very like macabre and like sad undertone, but like you nailed it with the humor, which so I'm going to get to my questions, because I could talk about that all day long, and so I want to keep on track, because I tend to like go all over the place when I get really excited. I just first have to tell you, this is probably one of my favorite stories I've ever read. You've done such a beautiful job at capturing humor in like a very macabre sort of subject, and sad undertones, as I was saying. And I don't know if you want to do a quick synopsis or summary for those who have not finished or who are going to
so The Bandit Queens is a dark comedy, as we've discussed. It follows Geeta, who is an artisan living in a village in modern-day India. Her husband disappeared 5 years ago. She didn't kill him, but everybody thinks she did, and she's okay with that rumor because it actually serves her in her business. But then the other wives in the village start demanding Geeta's help, because they too want to become self-made widows. And events start to spiral out of control, things snowball, and Geeta and this cast of women must make choices to protect themselves and each other.
It's such a beautiful story, and I just found it so clever. What made you, what was the genesis of this? Like, what made you, what was the starting point, or that kernel?
The kernel was, I was visiting my dad and my brother and my extended family in India one summer, and my dad at that point was involved in financing a microloan group. And so my brother and I and my father, we took a day trip to this village on the outside of the city where my family lives, and we sat in on a loan meeting. And I thought that was really unique, and I thought it was special. And I thought, I'm going to write a short story about microloans and money, and it's going to be, what's sexier, what's more sexy and corrupt than money. But that was a short story, and then that was written in 2013. And in 2020's quarantine, I returned to the short story, and I said, okay, there's a larger world here. And so I started writing, and a larger world did unfold. And at that point, I realized I wasn't writing about money. I was writing about these women and their friendships and their distrust of each other that would ultimately lead to loyalty.
Yeah. And it did. I love the loyalty. What I really love so much about your writing is how there are all these like things going on, the microloans and the dynamics, and all of the different relationships and all of their individual businesses that they have. And I love that you don't over-explain anything, but you really insert the reader right in the heart of those dynamics. And so, at first everything's sort of through Geeta's eyes, and then it all sort of peels away, and you can see how these women have had an impact on each other's lives for so long, and they each have their own stories to tell. Did you have a particular, besides Gita's, did you have a particular character that you loved to write
Saloni.
about? Did you have a favorite?
Saloni's my favorite. She's
Yeah,
all those things that you love about your best friend that maybe the qualities that you don't necessarily have. Like I admire Saloni so much because I am
yeah,
not her and I aspire to be her. She's so sharp, ambitious, clever. She can command a crowd. Like she's a total alpha. She has a lot of the great one. I think she has some of the best one-liners in the novel, and I don't think it's any secret as to why I gave them to her because she's my favorite. And she's also,
yeah.
not above using the assumptions and stereotypes that people make of her, of women, to her own advantage. And I find that to be so resourceful and so admirable. So I think Saloni is my favorite. Do you have a favorite?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I would say honestly Saloni as well. I totally agree, and I felt so satisfied when there was that moment between Gita, and I don't want to spoil anything, but that beautiful moment where there's that reconciliation, so to speak. Because you, as a reader, I just was like longing for it, and so I just love their yin and yang because I feel like they really complement each other so well as characters, and where Saloni is able to like speak up and have these like great one-liners, which also Gita does as well. She's got some really beautiful, although she doesn't say them maybe as much out loud, her inner voice, but I think they complement each other so well. But definitely Saloni, but I also
Oh
like
yeah,
Body
yeah, the
Bye. Is that how you say
goon.
it? Oh,
He's yeah,
yeah, because he's
hapless,
just,
I think.
yeah. It's just so fun. And so we also, speaking of characters, we also have to talk about a little bit about
Yeah, Fulan
Fulan. Is
Devi.
that, am I saying it correctly? Um, yeah, and I honestly, I didn't know this was the first time I was aware of her. So I have to thank you for that because now I'm going on a huge deep dive and I find her so wild and inspiring and fascinating. A woman who led a gang in India and became known as like a Robin Hood type of a figure, so to speak, for punishing rapists and helping women and ultimately gaining the name or the nickname the Bandit Queen. So can you tell us a little bit like at what point you decided to incorporate her in and
I
how you
think
did that?
the introduction of Fulan as like a running source of inspiration for the characters was twofold. First, Geeta starts off in the novel from such a place of isolation. She's a social pariah because everybody thinks she killed her husband, and she's a fallen woman because she's not attached to a man. So she starts off from a place of such isolation from anybody that I thought in order for her to get up every day, in order for her to face this village that disrespects, hates her, in order to live a life, she'd have to pull from a power source other than herself. She'd have to like mythologize and idealize this larger than life character. And that's where Pulan Devi's real life story served as a source of inspiration for Geeta. And the second factor, I think, was when I was creating this world, and it takes place in an Indian village, and caste is an issue I discuss. And at that point, Pulan Devi's introduction in the novel seemed organic because she was born in a village in India and a Dalit woman, and therefore untouchable, outcast. And that just seemed like an organic way to feed Geeta's inspiration, but also address the scourge of caste and how it needs to be annihilated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was fascinating reading about it. And I almost feel like while we don't have an outward cast in our country, there is definitely
Mm-hmm.
stereotypes and prejudice and like an unspoken undertone of one. So it was wild to read about it so openly, the way that these women and their dynamics sort of intertwine and like are given a sort of uh,
Yeah.
like lane to stay in. And then even in their own circles, they have their own
They do.
sort
They
of caste
do.
system, I
Absolutely.
suppose. Yeah.
So I think so much of this novel, now that it's out in the world, like I'm hearing other people's thoughts and impressions. And I'm like so flattered sometimes because they align exactly with what I intended. And other things, I'm like, wow, I didn't necessarily consciously intend that, but I love your reading of it. And lately, one theme that I absolutely see in the pages is shame. Like there's a lot of these expectations that society has on women, the expectations that women have about other women, and there's shame. Like Geeta is not a mother, and that's a source of shame for her in this society. Saloni is not at the weight that she was at 19, and that's a source of shame for her. And Preeti, there is another character, we haven't discussed her yet, but she was the victim and survived an acid attack. And there's all these expectations and these ways that these women feel like they're falling short, and together they overcome it. When we're alone, we're so vulnerable and we're so hard on ourselves. But these cast of women see each other in a way that they might not necessarily see themselves, and they become stronger for it.
Yeah, absolutely. They're much stronger together. And I love how they do that collectively, and in such an unusual way.
Yeah. With the body
very,
count.
Very clever and fun. Yeah. It was so fun. For me, like, I literally couldn't put it down because I really felt so drawn to, like, the sort of whodunit, or not whodunit, but like, shit, what's gonna happen next? But also I really bonded, like, I felt part of their sisterhood, and especially how Geeta grows throughout, and how these relationships, you know, through the microloan, which are also women that many of whom she's grown up with, inform who she's becoming, and like you're saying, like, mirror each other. And she's like using those moments and interactions with these characters to become stronger and to become more independent and to really own who she is. And it's so satisfying
I
to
feel
watch
like
that.
we love,
Or to read.
I love I love the idea of second chances. I mean, who doesn't, right? Redemption and all the second chances. And this book has a lot of second chances, whether it's the platonic, you know, the friendship, the reuniting of an estranged friend, or a second chance at romance, or, you know, like adopting a dog to open your heart to other things. Like there's a lot of that, the theme of second chances. And I think that is something that resonates with people because we all want them, even if we maybe feel like we don't deserve them necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. Although this novel has murder and aspects and lots of gossip, it centers on the female friendship. And the women in this book, including Geeta, are just so layered and so fun and so sweet. And I know that we talked about a favorite character. Was there a character that, besides Geeta, that was your favorite? Is there one that was more challenging to rate for, or that you struggled with?
Farah is very complicated. I feel like, I mean, I don't know if I'm equipped to do it, but Farah could have her own book. Like she's got a lot going on, as we know. Like she's this happens pretty early in the novel, but Farah is the first wife to approach Geeta for her help in disposing of Farah's abusive husband. And there is a friendship, begrudgingly, right? Like there's a begrudging friendship there, born out of like this economic alliance because there's money and stakes involved. But there's distrust, and there's antagonism, and it's there's shades, right? And I think that's actually, I hope that is a realistic portrayal, because women's friendships and women's dynamics are really complicated, and their road is different than Geeta and Saloni's road. But I hope it's just as interesting, because there is like this backstabbing, can I trust you? Are we frenemies? What are we? Element with Farah and Geeta. And with Farah, it's like I wanted to portray that there's complexity there and there are layers to peel back, as you said. But that's hard to do without making a character just unlikable. And so that was difficult. It was challenging, and hopefully people don't dismiss Farah outright. Hopefully they see that there is a lot underneath the surface there.
Well, I think that's what you did so well, is that you
Mm.
I was surprised at her depth. You know, it could have, I think it would have been super easy to make her not necessarily one note, but like live in that trope of like the, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
nemesis or what, you know, like, but she has, like you were saying, like there are so many shades to her and layers. And I was blown away with uh, all of the subtleties and the manipulation, but I feel like at her heart it all comes from a good place. You know, even the villains can't like think that they're doing something for their own good, and I think she's fighting for her family and her children. um like, and you know, because there are so many shades and you really do bring out like these beautiful moments with her and shocking moments. What was that process like? Because I'm blown away by her, you know, extraordinary like character development. She's just very like
First of all,
multidimensional.
thank you. I think, you know, yay. I hear a lot of bashing. I hear a lot of fair bashing, and I'm like,
Thank you.
man, you got to give her a break. She's just trying to survive. I think when
Yeah.
I mentioned that the story this novel started off as a short story, and when I
Yeah.
had the germ of the idea of one wife approaching Geeta to help kill her husband, um, I was like, wait, but if you're plotting a murder and you're, you know, premeditating and all this stuff, that's psychopath behavior. That's sociopath behavior. And I was like, how do I
Yeah.
get people to root
That's,
for this? This is difficult. And I remember my father told me this, I'll never forget it. He said, I don't think you have to be a psychopath to kill. I think you just have to be hungry enough. And that's when I was like, okay, I can play with that. I can make Farah desperate enough and paint her in a corner enough where maybe you're rooting for her. And maybe that causes you to question, like, how bad do things have to be? Like, let's look at her circumstances. Let's not look at Farah. Let's look at her circumstances to see what led her to this, what made this feel like this is the only way out. Like, I have pros, cons, children, money, like survival. This is the best way. This is the neatest way. And I think from there, it became easier to explore her facets. And Farah is also a very lonely character which we come to realize. And that's something that Geeta hadn't necessarily known at the start of the novel. She was so busy being alone, which kind of ties to the themes of like coming together versus staying isolated.
yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how things come across as so complicated
Mm-hmm.
and at their core are
Yeah. And
very simple
the
and
simplicity, I think, is
um,
where we can all relate, because so many details, we talked about this, you and I, so many of these details are specific to this village in India, but the themes are more ubiquitous and therefore relatable.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so this is the novel. Sorry, the novel explores dark topics like domestic abuse, the caste system, and the patriarchy, but there is also a lot of humor, and I was
Yay.
laughing out loud majority of the time. I loved it so much. How did you achieve that balance? And I mean, did you do multiple rewrites? Was it like super
Yeah,
easy? Or
thank you for saying
love
that.
it.
It seems like the humor really like struck people. And I'm so happy about that, because when I initially started writing it, I felt like this was irreverent. I felt like, no, you can't do this. You are addressing the topics that you just mentioned: casteism, various forms of abuse, the patriarchy. And I tried to reject that, but I found that these characters, it wasn't necessarily the situations that were funny. The situations are dark and it's absurd that they're in them, but they're not funny. But the characters and how they dealt with it, how they survived, was humorous, and they were feisty and sassy and defiant. And so I couldn't really control them. They would just do what they wanted to do. And what they wanted to do was be like darkly comedic. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
they're
but
funny.
really
Yeah,
funny.
they're funny. They're really funny. Yeah. I
They
feel
were
like,
really
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean,
No,
no,
no.
you
I
go
just
ahead.
feel
I'm
like
sorry, I'm
it's
interrupting.
realistic. You can't strip comedy from life. It's how we process. It's how we deal. It's how these women get up every day, and they're funny with each other because that's a safe space to be funny. And
Yeah, but it's hard
thank you,
right
thank
into it
you,
so
thank you.
beautifully. It's if anyone really needs a pick me up, like in a laugh out loud, like dark comedy, this is
there's some good banter.
The book.
There's some yeah.
There's some
I think
great banter.
I think I owe that to Golden Girls. I watched a lot of Golden Girls, and if you want, you know, feisty women who are giving each other a hard time, but also going through real situations, I feel like the Golden Girls was a formative template for me in the 90s, and I think those themes in the comedy just are hardwired in there.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I'm looking through my questions. Oh, you received your MFA at UT here in Austin, where I'm at, and I saw that you studied under Elizabeth McCracken, who I've also been able to speak to, and she's amazing. Where in the writing of your book where were you in the writing of your book, like during your MFA? Were you writing
such a great question?
So
I remember this. My very first workshop at UT was with Elizabeth McCracken. She was our first workshop professor, and I volunteered to go first for workshop, which is where, for those of you who don't know, in workshop setting, you take turns submitting stories, and your peers have a week to read, and then you all get together and you examine what's working and what's not working in the short story. And that conversation is led by your professor, in this case, Elizabeth McCracken. So I volunteered to go first because I had this story that I'd written over the summer when I was visiting India. And it was, okay. I think that's the kindest thing I could say to myself. It was okay. And Elizabeth was amazing in diagnosing, what was and wasn't working in the short story. I reworked it and I submitted it to her again 2 years later because she was my thesis advisor. So at that point, my thesis was not a novel. It was just a collection of short stories. And with her help, I was able to turn the short story from one where there are no murders to one where there are murders. And that just made it infinitely more interesting and I think propulsive. So that short story, the second time around, thanks to Elizabeth McCracken, is what I think I was able to go with that tone and then turn it into a novel. She's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant and so generous. Like as an instructor, mentor, professor, teacher, all of it. She's so wonderful and she's so talented. It makes my eyes like boggle.
Will you remind me? Your story reminds me so much of what she does so great, where you're like in the story and you're like, wait, like you feel a part of the journey. You really feel like you're part of the characters and inserted right here, part of it,
just thrown in.
Immersive, just thrown right in, and it's very similar.
I will take it.
I love it
Any
so
comparison
much.
Over I will take it.
Well, no, honestly, like I'm just so in awe and so inspired. She also told me this nugget that I'll never forget, because I thought it was really interesting with how she was like I was asking her, like, how are you coping? I think she had maybe a kid at home, and her husband's also an author, and I was like, how do you do all this during pandemic, like under lockdown? And she and her husband ended up renting like an apartment somewhere else, and they would trade off hours. Like he would write during these hours and he would go and be in his zone, and then she would trade off. And I just found it so interesting and how she was working in writing, especially under the cloud of COVID. How do you write? Like, are you like, I've heard a lot of, I think, what is it, 10,000 words a day or something insane, or maybe it's 1,000, maybe I'm like going crazy, but like, like there's some writers who are like so diligent and they have like a certain accomplishment every day, and it doesn't matter how good or bad or
I am not that.
Writing.
I am not that. I feel like, okay, I say this, I've said this to others before. For me, writing is a lot like exercise. I have to like trick myself into starting it. I enjoy it during, and then after, I'm so happy I did it. But it's that initial starting is the hardest part for me. And I don't have, and because I have to trick myself to even sit down and like begin, I don't have like time goals or word goals, because that just doesn't work for me. I know it works for a lot of people, and like, it's all about finding what works for you, right? So for me, for me, I have to trick myself. So I light these like colored tapered candles because I love them and I only let myself light them when I write. It's like a little treat. So I trick myself with that. Then I sit down and I say, just edit what you wrote previously. You don't have to, if you don't want to, you don't have to think of anything new. You just have to edit what you wrote previously. And that, more often than not, starting by editing will get me back in the zone, and then more often than not, I will continue on for hours and create new content and keep the story going. So it's just about like the mental tricks, like only run till that post, only run till that, and then you just keep going. You hit it and you keep going.
Yeah. Like, as well, I'm already
started.
here.
That's the hardest part. Might as well keep this party going.
That's awesome. And I also read that you're an attorney. Are you still practicing? And
Yeah.
if so, how do you find the time?
I practice part-time. I'm very fortunate to work freelance. And so more often than not, I make my own hours and I can bill, just work however many hours I want to or need to. And without that part-time dynamic and part-time writing and treating both as like together as a full-time job, I think it'll be possible for me. It just take a lot longer for me to create. And it's just, yeah, I couldn't. Full-time lawyers, all y'all, if there are any watching, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it.
But still, I mean, I don't know how you do it. I'm just so impressed with like I'm a mom, and I feel like I can barely like tie my shoes half the time. And so to watch someone, like see you write and also be able to practice when you practice and do the things that you love is like super inspiring.
It's very, very kind. And I know for a fact that you do more than like tie your own shoes. So yeah. I do.
You know what I mean? I find like the ability, especially being a woman and in this, to be able to create and carve your own path, I think is inspiring, and to be able to find the things that light you up, and to do it on your own terms. And I find stuff like that really inspiring. And, women-centric books like The Bandit Queen. So I wrote some questions down that the readers and audience had. So I'm going to get into some of those really quickly. Sorry, I am disorganized notes. What books have you loved recently, and what are some books that you recommend?
I love, this isn't a recent one, but it's one that stays with me and inspires me. White Teeth by Zadie Smith is just, I love that book. Oh, yeah. It's just one I return to time and time again. I'll just open up to a random passage, and often when I'm stuck, it'll help. It's I can't recommend it enough. Lately, I've read a lot of great books. I just finished Night Wherever We Go, and I loved Animal by Lisa Taddeo. It's an intense read. It's a super intense read with I'd give lots of read some trigger warnings, caveats, but it's a visceral, amazing read. I think that was quite talented. I also just finished Dinosaurs by Lydia Millett, and it's a quiet gem.
It's so good. That one.
Yeah. Then it's a very short read, but the emotional impact she creates with such an economy of space, I find that so impressive, and I'm very envious of that because I need more pages and words to do what she does in just a short, brief moment of. I highly recommend Dinosaurs. It's a quiet, small read that's talking about big things.
Yeah. Oh, amazing! So cool. I'm excited. I feel like I just read top books to read or something, and it was on there. Awesome. Sorry, my husband is turning on the car, and I'm like, I hope this doesn't go in the car all of a sudden. I digress. People are wondering what your average day looks like.
Lately, I don't have an average day anymore with the release, just happening last month. But typically, I'll do a regular average day. Okay. typically I'll get up in the morning and I will write. I used to be a afternoon, evening writer, but it no longer serves me. So you got to do what works for you. So now I write in the mornings, and then around noon, I'll take a break to exercise. And then after exercising, I will put on my lawyer clothes and I'll work for the latter half of the day. And then I come home and cook or do whatever house stuff needs to be done. Then I'll read slash watch a little bit of TV. It just depends on which storytelling is engaging me at that moment. And then I go to sleep. Oh, and sometimes I read in the tub with some wine, and that's a nice little. That is the best. If I can get like some time to carve out where there will be no interruptions, including like not looking at my phone, then that is just so perfect and helps me sleep. The bath really relaxes me. So that's about it.
That's really a very progressive day. I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing. I would be lucky to do any of those things in a day. That's awesome. What do you watch? Out of curiosity.
I love dark comedies, which might not be no secret. So I love Dead to Me. I love. I'm watching Shrinking right now. It's the new Apple TV show with Jason Segel, and it's darkly comedic, which I'm really enjoying. It also has Harrison Ford. I'm only 3 episodes in, but thus far I am intrigued, and I will continue to watch. Let's see what else. I don't know why. When every time I'm asked this, everything I've ever watched or read flies out of my head, and I'm like, what? Yeah.
I suddenly get all embarrassed and like start filtering.
Yeah, like,
I don't know.
What's a respectable thing to admit to watching? Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
Basically, if it's a comedy and it has female friendship, I'm in. Like, this show got canceled, but I loved Pivoting. Yeah, it was one season, but I was there for that season. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Same with I don't know if you saw 1899. It's not a dark comedy, but it was definitely like
I gotta add
dark. And that was. It wasn't. I mean, I wouldn't call it. It's definitely
just
not
dark.
a comedy. So yeah, and you're and there's only one season, so but the acting is really phenomenal. Are there any authors that you want to meet?
Lisa Taddeo. I got it. I mean, I have questions and talent. I'd also love to meet Lily King. Lily King is so like Writers and Lovers is so beautiful. It's another book I return to. I would love to.
I have read it. I haven't read it. It's so terrible.
Much like it's a character you're gonna fall in love with and feel really intimately towards. You're gonna root for her, and it takes place in the 90s, and so there are certain modern, there's no cell phones, and because of that, it's used like it furthers the plot in ways that you might not anticipate. Because we're reading it now, and we're like, well, this could be solved with a text, but that's not a thing. Yeah. It's not a thing, and it's just it's such a beautiful read. I really recommend it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be next. Dinosaurs and Writers and Lovers. I know it's sitting on my bookshelf, and I've been meaning to pick it up. And
there are
just so many great books.
Enough time.
I know. And speaking of Lisa Taddeo, I feel like she's another one. She's we've been able to chat a few times, and she's another author who is so prolific and
produced
constantly churning out. I feel like stuff. Yeah, I'm now producing and running, and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Work.
I
would get along really, really well.
I mean, I don't know. I might make it a fool of myself if I actually got into a room or chat with Lisa today. I might be like,
oh hell no! She's so normal. She's so cool, and just not that I know her that well. I wish I did, but she's just so down to earth and a girl's girl, and writing about issues that speak to her heart like you do. And I think y'all would hit it off. Just another creating great work.
She's quite brilliant. I'm like, how did you do this? Give me your secrets.
I know, right?
Thank
yours is pretty fucking
thank you.
No, thank you. Is there anything else too? Like, is there anything that you want your readers to know, or where do you want to direct people? I can link
Oh,
spots to buy
yeah.
your
I
book.
would like if
Um,
you can, support your local independent bookshop and they carry the Bandit Queens. I'd love for you to grab a copy and laugh with us because it is funny and it is inspiring. And I think when you read it, you will be reminded of your own friendships and you might call or text your besties and say, hey, let's hang out. Let's not kill anybody, but let's hang out.
yeah. Exactly, but I mean it has like a deep through line of like old friendships, and like it really did make me feel, oh my gosh, I really need to reach out
Good,
to,
good.
old friends. Yeah,
Yeah.
found it very
I love that. I
heartfelt.
wrote it during the pandemic, and I think I knew I was missing my own friendship, like my own friends. I couldn't see them. We couldn't get in the car and hang out. We couldn't get on a plane and hang out. And I think it might be a love letter to them and missing them during that specific time of isolation, because isolation is a theme in the novel. And I don't think that's a coincidence
Yeah.
because during 2020, we were all feeling isolated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, this is
Mm.
certainly a love letter to friendships and sisterhood in
Yeah.
such a great, dark, fun way. So excited for you. And
Oh, no.
thank you so much for your time. Like, I know that you might have slammed,
Thank
and
you. Thank you so much
congrats.
for having me and for picking that as a book club pick. That is such an honor. I am like, yes, and I'm thrilled to be here and chatting with you. Like, this is, my day might be busy, but this is definitely, it's not going to get better than this.
Ah, you're the best. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I look forward to keeping in touch, and I look forward to like seeing all the badass work that you create in this world. And you're just you're just
You're so kind.
rock star. So thank you so much. And everyone, please pick up this beautiful book by Parini, Bandit Queens. I will link a couple of bookshops that you can buy it from, but go get it. You will not regret it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Speak soon.